and up at the highway.
Yeah. So the whole idea is that what we call now is the head-up display. If that option is bought by the customer, voice control, and the steering wheel buttons together with the instrument display there.
Is voice control working?
No, not in this demo version. So you can stay quite a long time just in front of the steering wheel and looking at the road and have glances down there.
Right.
But then when you feel kind of relaxed, comfortable, and do some things that is not time critical, then you could move over to that side and do things there.
And depending upon traffic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What about the DLNA? Is that like integration with phones for the screens?
It's for media streaming from usually mostly Android phones like Samsung and so.
Yeah. But it's going to be like the Apple CarPlay we've seen the preview. That's going to be another tile.
Yeah, the equivalent for Android for Apple CarPlay is Android Auto, and we're gonna support that also.
And that's going to come through the phone from DLNA.
No, not through DLNA. It would be USB.
Oh,
like
okay.
Because you need a good bandwidth.
Yeah.
And to repeat, what you said is that this screen is portrait style orientation.
Yeah.
Because actually, when you think about it, a lot of things you do, for example, recent calls, if you want to go in that, you want to have as long list as possible to reduce scrolling and going deeper down there. You don't want the widest list, you want the longest list. Yeah. When you're in maps, for example, you want to see in the direction you're driving, not so much what's happening 90 degrees left or right. So and we have a couple of things in there. And the third reason for having portrait orientation is also, as it is a touchscreen, it's enormously important to have it ergonomically correct. And if you have a very wide thing, it gets quite inconvenient to be out there. But as long as you keep yourself close to the center of the car, it's still in an ergonomic position all the time. So a couple of arguments that comes down when you think about it, that the portrait style is much more logic than a landscape style.
Yes.
Even though competition, all their screens are very low and wide. So, yeah.
Cool. I just noticed there's a speed limiter. What's the difference with the speed limiter and the cruise control?
Yeah,
Is that another name for it?
Set that I don't want to drive above that specific speed. Yeah,
Right.
teenage lock.
Oh, I see.
So you're the left and right button there. You toggle between different, more or less semi-autonomous drive features, and then you adjust the speed up and down, and then you regulate the distance to exactly. That's it. And to repeat also what was said before is the screen is using a touch technology which is based on infrared sensors, which is positioned between the frame and the screen element, and it makes it, where I live in Sweden, Gothenburg, it's, and some of you guys up north in America here, you might have gloves in the winter time. You can use gloves, you don't have to touch it with your skin actually. But if you're a woman, for example, and have long nails, yeah, you don't have to do this thing, you can actually point at it that way. So, and the benefit of separating the touch sensors and the screen itself is that then we can maximize the bonding we have on top for anti-reflection. Because when you bond both the touch sensors and the anti-reflection, it gets quite complicated and expensive to do that. So we've separated those two. So there's a lot of benefits of having the IR technology in there. And what you saw on the video there,
This model is going to get very good mileage.
when you swipe from left to right like that, we're taking all the
I don't know which
black plastic button you usually find very close to the floor in the car. Put them as high as possible, and you can rearrange them. And if if they were plastic before, we're calling these glass buttons actually in there. So try to be more flexible and have it more personalized experience than when in the old days when we decided these 6 buttons are the most important. They might not be relevant to everybody. Another thing is in front of you and the instrument there, you have the 2 dials. And it's very conventional to have 2 dials, but it's not just a speedometer and a rev counter. Because the rev counter, if you put the car in another drive mode, for example, dynamic drive mode, where things happen with suspension and shifting and things like that, then we change the look of it. Yeah, if you put it into Hmi Qa, for example, low consumption, then it becomes an eco gauge, which shows, we'll say, average consumption and the momentary consumption. And if you have a hybrid car, you see this hybrid gauge there, which shows is it running on electricity or petrol, and is it recharging, for example. So that is more kind of how is the engine performing that you can see in that gauge.
So the display is a physical snapshot of the mode that it's in.
Yes, it is. I can say the content of this display depends on what drive mode you're in. Then you can switch independent of that the skins. So you can have a more classic skin, you can have a very dynamic skin, and the normal skin like you see here. So that's the way it's set up. And then when you have the map, we have a destination set. You see the map in the center, because what we have done here is that in the head-up display, if I have that, it's the next turn. You see that 300 meters, then turn left. Down here you can see the more tactical map, the next 3 turns, detail intersections and things like that. And over here you usually have the more strategic overview. Am I going south or north of the lake or something like that? So that's the different usage of the different areas of the car. There are some manufacturers that almost allow everything in every interface, where you can do everything from the steering wheel, you can do everything here, but that's not the Volvo strategy. It's more tactical now and more strategic, and whenever you have time over there.
So that's the general overview of the map. That's where you're going. That's the detail of the path that you're taking.
Exactly. Yeah. But if you have not set a destination,
Yeah.
you only have
Great
the map
idea.
over there, so you can have a glance, see, okay, where am I? Then
Yes, how many
here
times you
becomes
get caught
darker in the
like,
center,
little
the
spot that you
dials
lose
go
focus
together,
of it.
grow
But
10%
yeah,
again. It's much calmer experience. And then from the bottom we have messages coming up. For example, if you're in navigation, it's turn left or right in a couple of 100 meters, and you can have an incoming phone call. And from the top you get more system messages, low fluid levels, or check the battery or whatever it is. So it's kind of the very important messages up there and more infotainment messages from the bottom.
And anything that the system is going to dictate or say to you, it's going to override the radio. And if you were playing the C,
If you have a Navi and it's voice control, it's going to tone down or mute the radio a bit, and in comes the voice and saying something. Yeah.
For the speech recognition, is there like a tutorial you have to do for the system to adapt to your voice?
No, actually not. It's it of course will get a bit smarter over time there, but for the US and China market, we have invested a lot of money in making it very receptive to what's it, dialects. Yeah, because it's so huge countries with various ways of saying things. We don't do that in Sweden, for example. But the thing with the voice control is that what you're experiencing in cars today is that you have to be more command-based. Here is more one-shot. Take me to an Italian restaurant in Napa Valley, for example. And if it can't figure it out on board, it goes out to the cloud and do some processing there. Yeah, so that's the thing. And if it has to do it like, okay, there are 300 Italian restaurants in Napa, wherever it is, then you get a hit list in the instrument you can choose there. Either you say it, or you say the number, or you click through the list there. That's the way it's set up.
What about the temperature control with your voice?
You can do that. You say warmer, and I think we raise it with 2.5. Or you can say 20, whatever you say. 68 you say. Yeah. You can say that also.
With voice command, you can just about anything. Change the radio channel, change the temperature of the car. So,
Navi, media, phone, climate.
and that's the best
But
way for us
you
to get
can't,
to our old
you
clients.
can't. What?
That's the best way for us to get to our old clients.
Yes.
To use the
I
car.
think so. And it's the basic functions. You can't say turn on 4-wheel drive or off 4-wheel drive. You can't say that because
Right.
we think it's a bit
Right.
too advanced things to. You want to have a physical.
Yeah. Will let me put on the rear defogger and that kind of stuff?
No, not the thrusters. You have to use
Next time.
the next time. Yeah, probably we can extend that thing. Yeah,
Sure.
I hope we can get into more even smarter products and next time that turns on the rear defroster if it's needed.
Right.
Yeah.
But it already does it automatically. You already have in your settings to start
Yeah.
automatically start the defrosters. You don't need to actually say it. Usually it's already going to be on. Move my seat forward.
Yeah, or put me in the nicest position.
Wow.
So folks, I want to make sure that everybody has enough time to jot down notes. This is a fantastic opportunity to sit with Michael and gain insight into the design. But again, I would also invite you to sit down, either if you haven't experienced the interior, or take a seat in our couches and make some notes, so that you can plan out what you're going to discuss at your retail location. Plus, we're going to do a review during our wrap-up of what's the best strategy to present this system. So we'll do that as a group. So please.
It's scary.
Still